And thank you to everybody for joining us. The Loudon Valley High School PTSA is so excited to have Renee here with us to share some insights and inspiration, how we can help our kids stand out and be successful in their college search. And I was just sharing with Renee, this is part one of a three-part series that we're doing. So at our March PTSA meeting, we encourage you to join us. We're going to bring in some of the 2025, class of 2025 to share some alumni inspiration and thoughts from their first year of college or work. And then in April, we're going to do a SAT practice test. So you can bring your laptop with you, log into SAT Blue Book, and have a real simulated opportunity to try the SAT all the way through. So hopefully, we're going to share some good resources with you, get ourselves ready for the college experience. And I'll turn it back over to Renee with just a huge thank you for her being here with us today.
Great. Thanks so much. I really appreciate that, Jenna. I'm really grateful that you're here tonight. And if you're a parent of a high school student, I'm sure at some point you wondered, like I did at some point, am I doing the right things to prepare my child for college? And am I doing them early enough? So that's the type of thing that I'm going to cover and share with you today, and hopefully can help guide you through that process. High school goes super fast. I know I have two of my own children who I have gone through high school with, and also the college search process. And it's easy to start questioning, am I behind? Should I be doing things now? But also questioning, where do I even start? So tonight I'm going to walk you through what Loudoun Valley students should do to focus on each year of high school, not to do more, but to try to do the right things at the right time. The goal here is really to reduce stress, to avoid last minute scrambling, and to help students build a strong, authentic path to college and a very strong personal narrative in their college applications. And we'll talk about what a personal narrative is as part of this. So whether you have a student who's just starting high school in ninth grade, or you have an 11th grade student who has started the college process or haven't even thought about it yet, hopefully you're going to walk away from tonight with a clearer roadmap about what should be done and when, and what actually makes a difference in the application. So let's get started. First, I want to introduce myself. My name is Renee Minnick. I am a college consultant at Educational Connections. I'm a former Senior Associate Director of Admissions at the Rochester Institute of Technology. I spent over 32 years in college admissions before becoming a college consultant. And when I worked at RIT, I was fortunate enough not only to review first year applications, but I also reviewed transfer applications, international applications, and most importantly, I sat on their admissions committee. So when you think about an admissions committee and everybody sitting at a table together and deciding whether they are going to admit that student or not, that's actually how it happens. So I was fortunate to be on that committee and learned a lot about what colleges are looking for when they make a decision on a student's application. Before we get started into the formal presentation, I do want to let you know two housekeeping notes. One, we will be using the Q&A function tonight. I will be doing some question and answers at the end of the presentation. So if you have questions throughout the presentation, don't hesitate to drop them right into the Q&A, and I will answer them at the end. The second thing is that we will be recording this session tonight, and it will be sent out to you in a recording. So don't hesitate to share it with any family members or your child if you'd like to. But you absolutely will receive a copy of this recording. So don't worry about taking too many notes, and don't stress if you're not able to stay for the full presentation. Okay, let's get started. What is a holistic review process? First, we really want to think about the current college landscape. And the current college landscape really leans into many changes that are happening right now. The first thing that's happening is that we're seeing a large increase in the number of schools students are applying to. A number of years ago, they were applying to 6 to 8 schools, and then it became 8 to 10 schools, and then it became 10 to 12 schools. I had a student this year that applied to 28 schools. That is many more that I recommend, but with the ease of online applications and the changes in testing policies that we saw during the pandemic, we are seeing students apply to more and more colleges. And this is lowering acceptance rates, especially at selective schools. So students really want to stand out more, how to have strong essays, extracurriculars, leadership, Those are things I'm going to talk about tonight because they are carrying more weight in the admissions process. The second thing that we're seeing a change in is the importance of test scores. So as I mentioned, many colleges went to test score optional during the pandemic, and now we're seeing them return to a test score required policy. Not all schools, but many of schools are making that transition. So we're going to talk tonight a little bit about the importance of test scores and how they impact an application. We've also seen a trend of public schools over private schools. Many families are really prioritizing cost and return on investment. So this is leading to a higher interest in public universities. They offer in-state tuition, merit aid, strong academics. So they're very, very appealing options. We're also seeing students really leaning towards the use of early admissions. I've heard the term early action is the new regular decision more times than I can tell you. So the bulk of students now are applying early action as opposed to regular decision, which is really pushing the timeline of college applications up even farther. Early decision is still an option. Early decision is binding. You can only select one school and apply early decision, and it must be your first choice. And if admitted, you do need to enroll there. Early action just is an earlier timeline, but you can apply to multiple schools early action. So we're seeing a change to students applying early decision and early action and less applying to regular decision. And then, of course, in every other aspect of our life, AI is impacting college admissions. So we are seeing a rise in AI screenings of college applications, not only on the actual essay writing, which I think is where most people think that colleges are using AI, but they're also using AI to fill out their application review more quickly so they can go through a higher number of applications in a shorter period of time. So it's really important that students have clear and concise essays and applications that can be read in an efficient way by the admissions office. Next, I want to talk about holistic review. And the question really is, what is a holistic review process? I get this question quite often from families. A holistic review process considers the whole person, not just the academic metrics like GPA and test scores. The goal here really is to understand the applicant's character, their potential, their unique experiences, and how they might contribute to the college campus. So the next question I get is, what is considered outside of academics? Essays, letter of recommendations, extracurricular activities, leadership roles, work or volunteer experiences, contributions to the community. And another key one is personal background or life changes. So when a college takes a holistic review approach to an application, they will consider things that may have impacted a student's academic background. For example, I had a student I worked with last year that contracted mono and was out of school for a number of weeks. They were able to share that as part of their application, and the schools that had a holistic review process would take that into consideration if they saw a dip in grades. This type of admission process can be really beneficial to students if they don't have the strongest GPA or if they're choosing not to submit test scores, because it's another nice layer to the application to tell colleges why they would be a good fit for their school. So you really want to think about what is it that colleges want to see and what's important to them as part of the admissions process. So I love this triangle because I think it's super helpful to really understand what colleges are looking for. The first thing is the foundation is academics and program rigor. You really have to think about what classes you're taking and what your academic performance is. And it's not just about having a high GPA. It's about what types of courses have you taken? Have they been advanced or honors, AP, IB, any of those types of classes? Taking those advanced classes really shows academic drive and readiness, even if it results in a little bit lower grade in that class than a lower level class. I always tell students take the highest level class possible you can still do well in. And I'm assuming at your school, like many other schools right now, that question is coming up. What classes are you taking in the fall, especially for students who are juniors and thinking about their senior year? Because that's one of the years that you start to have a lot of choices in what you are going to be taking. The second level is community contribution and depth of engagement. And this is really where you're thinking about what type of things are the student involved in outside of class. Colleges are increasingly emphasizing impact over quantity. What I mean by that is they're not looking for a student to be taking or to be involved in 15 different activities. They're looking for them to apply themselves to a smaller number of activities, maybe participating in 5 to 7 things that you're doing year after year after year, growing within those organizations, taking on leadership roles. I usually say depth over breadth. So pick something you're interested in and really dive into that. It can be really anything, and we're going to talk a little bit about that later on, but think about clubs at school, academics, athletics, community engagement, volunteering, activism, but it also can be things like helping with family responsibilities, a part-time job. There's so many different ways to show this and show how you are involved outside of the classroom. One of the things I think students forget is that showing that you're involved in these activities and still maintaining a strong GPA is a great way to also show colleges that you have strong time management skills as well. And then authentic character at the top. I know it has the smallest part of the triangle, but it really still is important. Colleges are looking to learn more about the students through part of the application process. They want to know who you are, what's important to you, what kind of things have you done in high school, and what kind of student will they be adding to their campus if they admit you. Okay, the next thing I like to talk about is exploring what makes you you. I will tell you, every student will say at some point, there's nothing special about me. But I have yet to work with a student or know a student that there isn't something special about them. It can be a talent, it can be an experience, a passion for something. There's so many different possibilities. So what I recommend students do, and I think this is a great exercise for you to do with your children, is number one, to start tracking their activities. I'd recommend that you make some sort of a Google Doc or Excel spreadsheet, anything that works for you, to keep track of the things that they've done from ninth grade on. This can be clubs, athletics, performing arts, volunteer work, jobs, any of those things. List anything and everything you can think of. And then take a look at it and say, okay, am I well-rounded? Have I done a number of different things? Or have I only played soccer throughout high school and I haven't done anything else? So once you see it on paper, I think it's really a great way for you to get a bigger picture of what the personal narrative is that you're going to be presenting to colleges. I also include things like awards, honors, leadership, those types of things on the application, or not on the application, on the spreadsheet as well, because that's something that you can also list on the application. There's a separate section for awards and honors, so you want to get that all documented. And if you're a ninth or 10th grade student, this can be a great way to start tracking things so you don't forget them, and also help you decide what things you might get involved in the next couple of years in high school. If you're an 11th grade student, this is a great time for you to start using this as a way to make a resume that you can submit with your college applications as well. So I think tracking is a really good start. The next thing I encourage students to do, and I think you can do this with your own children as well, is to start asking questions like, what do I like to spend time doing? What's the most important or special item that I own? What's a favorite experience that I've had? Or tell me a story that you like to tell about yourself. These are all great questions to start a student thinking about what is unique, what is special about them, because these are things that you want to share through the application process. It's funny, when I first saw this picture, and I looked through the images were there, I laughed because I think I have a student that I work with that has done every single one of these things and has shared that type of information in their application. I even had a student who loved to bake last year and had a whole family history of baking and shared that. So all of these things might look common, but they also might be unique to your child. So let them dream big. Let them talk about themselves. Let them, and if they don't want to talk about themselves, like some students don't, have them start a journal where they're answering some of these questions for themselves to really think about the unique things that they've done or the passions that they have. Another way you can think about exploring different things that a student is interested in is by taking an assessment. And there's a number of different assessments available that a student can take. In particular, I use one called AchieveWorks. So I have an example of what that looks like here. So in AchieveWorks, there's four different assessments: personality, intelligences, learning, and productivity and skills. And when students take these assessments, they learn something about themselves, and it's always interesting to see the results. And I go over them with a student and then ask them, like, what percentage do you think this is correct about you? And I normally get 80 to 85%, but sometimes they find some things in there that are surprising. But the other thing that I like about many assessments is that they suggest possible academic majors for college and also career paths. And this can be especially important for students who are feeling a little bit undecided about what they might want to major in college. There are also other basic free assessments available online. We use AchieveWorks, as I mentioned, but you can also go to College Board's Big Future website, and they have assessments available there as well if you're interested in having your child take one of those. I know I mentioned the course selection is important, and I'm sure that a number of students are thinking about that or talking about that right now with their college counselor. So I think it's important to note that thinking about course selection is important whether your child is in ninth grade, 10th, or 11th grade, even eighth grade, a great time to start thinking about it. So some colleges have, and some majors in college have very specific coursework requirements. So you want to make sure that you get all of those prerequisites satisfied. I'll give you an example. When I was at RIT, I read engineering applicants, and both chemistry and physics are required to enter an engineering program. I can't tell you how many times I read applications from very strong students that had to be denied simply because they were missing chemistry or physics. It's a prerequisite they need to have in high school in order to be prepared for the college coursework. So if your child has a major selected, that is something you want to think about as you're selecting college classes. And coursework normally builds on itself. That's why I say thinking about it even in eighth grade is important. So talking about it as early as possible allows you to present your strongest possible academic profile when you're applying to colleges. And as I mentioned, my advice is always to take the highest level course possible that you can still do well in. And for me, still do well in means a B or higher. If you're going to take a higher level course and you're going to get a C, you might want to think about whether that is the right course selection for you. And I know we have a couple parents of 11th grade students on here as well. And I just want to be thoughtful to mention that senior year coursework is very important. Sometimes they think by the time they get to senior year, they don't need to worry about it because colleges are just looking at the grades from 9th through 11th grade. But students do have to include their senior year coursework on their application. So colleges do know what you are taking your senior year. And it really sets the tone for how well they feel you are prepared for college. In addition to that, many colleges will pull either the first marking period or at times first semester grades from 12th grade. So it definitely is not a time to take your foot off the gas. You want to keep applying yourself right through senior year. I know Jenna mentioned a little bit earlier as well that you're starting to talk about teacher recommendations and the high school resume. So I was thrilled to hear the teacher recommendations noted. And this is really something that students should be thinking about. Before I get to that, I want to actually talk about the high school resume first. So what I recommend students doing is taking that activity tracker that they had and making a resume as well. Being prepared and having that done ahead of time before you start the college application process. And there's three ways that I encourage students to use resume. The first is that they can give it to their teachers when they ask them to be recommenders. So sometimes teachers only know you in that classroom setting. So when you're providing them with a resume, suddenly they know a great deal more about you, and that can lead to a stronger recommendation. I also have students included in their application, their college applications, if the college allows you to upload one as part of the Common App process. If they do allow you to upload one, it's always optional. And when a student takes the time to do the optional parts of an application, I think it shows colleges that they're willing to take that extra step and take that extra effort, even when it's not required. The third way that they can use a resume is when they're meeting with admissions professionals. Maybe someone from the college is coming to your high school and you can give them a resume. Maybe they're coming and doing hometown interviews. Many colleges do that now. You can give them a resume. If you go to visit a college campus and interview with an admissions professional, you can give them a resume. So I like to start thinking about making a resume in spring of junior year to make sure everything is included on there that the students have done. Now let's switch gears back to the recommenders. So recommenders are often teachers that students really have connected with, that they know they've done well in the class. That's the typical person that they're going to ask, which I think is great. But I also encourage students to think about maybe you should ask for a recommender from someone who can speak to your insight beyond your grades. Maybe it's a class where you raise your hand a lot. Maybe it's a class where you led a group and you did really well in that. It's okay to even ask a teacher in a class that maybe you didn't do as well in because you went after class and you got support. You asked for that extra help. You were determined and made your way through that class that was challenging for you. Those teachers can really write some wonderful recommendations for students. So think outside the box a little bit when you're selecting recommenders. I really also encourage students, and that's why I was happy you brought it up today, Jenna. I encourage students to ask the teachers to be their recommenders before their end of their junior year. I do find that more and more teachers are liking writing essays over the summer because they have less competing priorities. And I also like the students to be one of the first people to ask teachers to be a recommender instead of one of the last people to ask them in the fall. I get a lot of questions right now about summer programs. What should my student be doing in the summer? And the question is anything except nothing. So there's a lot of questions about different summer programs. And I do encourage students to use their summers with intent, with purpose. They shouldn't just be hanging out at home and not doing much, but they don't have to schedule every minute of every day as well. I know that summers are important, and especially with family time and you're traveling and taking vacations. But I also would like students to have different experiences to share on their application because they have utilized their summers well. So let me talk you through a couple different options for summer. The first one would be summer classes. A lot of students will ask me about, should I take classes? Should I get involved in a summer program? And I do think that that's a great option. Many are hosted by universities. They might be on campus. They might be online. They can be one day. They can be multiple weeks. Some of them are college level classes where you get credit for them. And some of them are non-credit courses that might just be college exploratory, which are great as well. These do show academic motivation and at times a taste of college life if a student does stay on campus during them. But it's also a time where a student might say, I take classes all the time. I'm looking to do something different this summer. And that's a great option as well. So there's other things that you can do that are not college classes. One is experiences. Think about volunteering, community service. Again, volunteering at the same place over and over is better than going to multiple different one-off volunteer experiences. You can also show initiative, like start a book drive, tutor, different things like that. These show leadership, empathy, initiative. These are all things that colleges are looking for in an application. I also have students sometimes who do independent projects or they explore a passion. I worked with a student who wrote a blog. I had a student who started a book. Last summer, I worked with a student who created an app, someone who made a film. I've also had students do music intensive, art classes, theater camps. I mean, these are all really great options. I even had a student last year who started his own business and he saw a need in his own area because his dad was always asking him to rinse out the trash can, the big trash bin. So he bought a power washer and put flyers all over the neighborhood and ended up starting this business, but wildly successful, had to actually hire on an employee of cleaning trash bins all summer. So he had this great story to tell in his college application about how he started his own business and wants to go into entrepreneurship. So lots of different possibilities there. And students can also work, have a part-time job. I think part-time jobs are an amazing way to spend your summer. It shows time management, it shows commitment, leadership, all of those things. And then the last area I would say is is internships. I get a lot of questions about internships. And I think if you can find something in your field, I think it's fantastic. Internships can be very challenging for high school students to find because they're competing against college students who are also looking for the same type of thing. So I encourage students to think about family, friends, anyone they may know that is a field that they're interested in and see if they can possibly internship or job shadow with them just to get a little bit better an idea of a field that they might be interested in. So we switch gears and we start talking about the college essay. And after we've done all of these experiences and we have all this great personal narrative, how are we sharing that with the colleges? So the resume is one, and the college essay is also a main factor. So there's two different types of college essays. One is the personal statement, and that is what's used through the Common App. You can submit this personal statement. It's 650 words. The questions normally come out like late February for the following year, so they'll be coming out pretty soon, but they're pretty much the same year to year. And this is really the main place where you have to share information about who you are. I love the college essay. This is my favorite part of the college admissions process. I just think it's fascinating and amazing that colleges have, or students have this free space to share anything with colleges. And the truth be told, you can write about anything. There's 7 different prompts, but the last prompt is write an essay on the topic of your choice. So I don't even have students look at the questions. I just talk to them about what are you interested in? Tell me something you're passionate about. Do some brainstorming about what they might want to talk about, what they might want to share. Sometimes students will fall in this trap of writing what they think the admissions office wants to hear, and I can tell those essays right away. Someone asked me once how many essays, college essays, I've read in my time at admissions. And when I added it up, I'm going to say probably over 30,000. So when I read one and I know they're trying to impress us or picking a topic they think we want to hear, you can tell that right away. Students can write about anything that they're passionate about. It's going to be easier to write and it comes across as very authentic. And that's exactly what colleges are looking for. So there's a couple things that you want to do to make your essay stand out. You don't want to write about someone else, first of all. And students often fall into that trap. I want to write about a parent or someone who's inspired me. But unfortunately, then the essay ends up being more about that person than about the students. That's really important. After the reading the essay, the admissions officers should know 2 things. One, they should know the student can write well. They're looking at that too. And 2, they should have learned something about the student. I also encourage students to avoid controversial topics or overused topics. And overused topics, I would say music, sports injury, Legos, if you're an engineer, read lots of Lego essays in my time. Think about something that might be a little different that your friends would write about something that will stand out to that admissions committee. There's certainly topics that I have seen over and over. And so if I have a student who picks one of those topics, then we try to dive in a little bit deeper. Why is it important to you? Tell me a story about that. Tell me something specific that no one else would have known. And I'll give you an example of that. I work with a lot of students who are scouts, many Eagle Scouts. My son's an Eagle Scout, so I know how much work goes into that. But if a student wants to write about scouts, I will say, tell me a specific story that happened while you were in scouting. Let's write about that because their unique experiences are what's going to make a topic that is very popular be different from the others that are written about that. The second type of college essay is supplemental essay. And supplemental essays are smaller, typically shorter essays or short answers that colleges ask you to write just for that particular college. So many of them will center around why are you interested in this college or why you're interested in the major you selected. But some will also ask questions about tell us about a time that you came up against a roadblock. Tell us about a time you served your community. So when students are looking back to some of these extracurricular activities, these community service experiences, these summer experiences, that's where they're drawing upon to answer some of these short answer questions. So really a second reason why using your summers to be active and involved can be very helpful in the application process. I want to switch gears now and talk about testing, which is another important component of the applications. There's so many questions around submitting test scores right now when you're applying to colleges, and also the differences between the SAT and the ACT, which I'm going to talk about next. I just met with a family just a couple hours ago who asked this exact question of, should I take the SAT or the ACT? But first, let's talk about testing and how it can help when applying to colleges. So there's definitely times when submitting testing can be a positive addition to a student's application. If a student has lower grades day to day and strong test scores, that's a great way to show ability to be successful in college. And if a student has strong grades day to day and they've also done well on test scores, it's a second positive indication that they can be successful. The question really is, do I submit or do I not submit test scores to all of these colleges that are test optional? I think that is probably the most challenging piece to navigate when students are submitting to colleges. So I want to walk you through real quickly, some of the reasoning behind my recommendations when I'm talking to students. The first thing that you want to do is look at the school's middle 50% of scores from the previous year, and you can find that information online. And then I look to see where the students' SAT or ACT scores fall in that. You also want to think about if the test score adds something to their application. That was the number one thing that I said to students once a lot of schools went test optional, including the college I worked for. Do you think it adds something to your application, or do you think that your high school transcript is a better indication of how well you can do in college? That's really the question you want to ask yourself. And then you also want to think about, how many students submit test scores to that school. If you're seeing a very high number of students submitting to that college, you'll know that that college really prefers to see test scores. So there's all these sort of pieces to the puzzle that you want to think about. And it's not always a blanket yes or no. I'm going to submit my test scores or I'm not. I'm going to submit my test scores to this college, but not to this college, depending on the data and how you analyze it and based on how your scores reflect to that. I hope that's not confusing, but at least some pieces of data that you can look at and think about. Okay, I did want to share a little bit of information about the SAT versus the ACT because this is a very common question that I get from students. Which one should I take? And there's all different types of advice out there. So I'm going to tell you based on lots of webinars I've done with test prep coaches and just my own knowledge of working with students. So the SAT is only a two-part test. The ACT has a number of parts to it. SAT only does math and reading, writing. It is a shorter test with only 98 questions, but length of time, it's about the same as the ACT. And I'll tell you the feedback that I hear most from students on the SAT. The SATs, many students will say to me, I read the question and I thought I knew what they were asking, but I went back and read it again to be sure. And then I answered the question. So you'll see that's why it has fewer questions in the same amount of time, because you really have to think about the question and then answer it. The ACT has more questions in the same amount of time, but they're more direct. So students will say to me, they're similar to the questions, the way questions are asked on my tests in high school. I could read it, I knew what they were asking, and I answered it. I read it and I answered it. So it really depends on the student and what type of format they like. Many students will take the PSAT first, so they're exposed to that first. So my question usually to them is, what did you think about the format? Did you like it? Did you walk out of there saying, oh, I don't ever want to take that again? Or did you say, okay, that made sense to me? If you're a student who's saying, okay, I felt okay about that, I would say continue on with that SAT. If you're a student who walked out and said, I really didn't like that and I'd like to try something new, try the ACT as an alternative. I think it's fine for students to try each of them once or take an SAT and take a practice test for the ACT to see what it's like. But I don't recommend that students prep and take both of them all the way through, because they are different types of prep and it is challenging to do both of them. So once you pick a lane, I recommend that you stay in that lane. Oh, the other thing I forgot to mention is that the SAT is predictive, meaning you take the first module, and depending on how well you did on that first module, you have a different second module. So if students come out of the SAT saying, wow, that second half was really hard, that's actually a good sign, because they give you the more challenging part on the second half if you do well in the first half. The ACT is not like that. The most important thing to know coming out of this is that all colleges will take either one and there is no preference. So you should be able to pick which tests your child takes based on what works best for them. You don't need to worry about what works best for the college because they truly have no preference. I also get a lot of questions about when should I prep? What's the best time to prep and how do I go about that? So it can be anywhere from 3 to 6 months before the testing date. I recommend students start prepping, and it really depends on the students. If they're really good and they have a system and they lay things out and they have a good routine, I think 3 months is fine. But if there's someone who's going to, I'm going to do a little bit here and then in a couple weeks I'll do it here, you might want to have a longer runway to do that. I do recommend one-on-one test prep if it's possible. I find students are able to engage a little bit more with one-on-one test prep as opposed to a class. And especially after you've taken it the first time, if you do test prep before your second one, it's a great way for a test prep coach to really only concentrate on what you need the most. Maybe you scored really high in math and lower in reading and writing. And so you can really do your test prep based on that instead of getting general information from a class. Okay, match versus fit. And I'm going to kind of go through this one fairly quickly. There's two things to consider when you're thinking about colleges. You want a college that is both a match and a fit for you. A match is that it fits you academically, your profile, it's what you're looking for as far as like an environment, how far close to home. If a student tells me the things they're looking for a college, I can give them a list of schools that I think are a good match. Fit, though, is very personal. Fit is about, is this school the type of school I want? Do I like the environment? Do I feel comfortable on this campus? Can I see myself here? That's really important to consider as well. And sometimes that takes a campus visit to actually determine. When students are ready to build their college list, I would say this is probably one of the things that I work on the most with students, and one of the things students find the most challenging. So when you're thinking about building a college list, you want to think about having a balanced list. And that means having schools in all three categories of reach, match, and likely. So once you have your list, you really should put them right into buckets so you know how balanced your list is. Reach means admission is less likely, but it's possible because it's a selective school or your academics are below what they typically admit. Target, obviously, match schools. This is where your academics fall right in line with students they typically admit. And then likely, we used to call them safety schools. Now we call them likely schools. Likely are schools that you're likely to be admitted because your academic profile is above where the school typically admits. And I find that many students have the same 10 schools on their list that their friends do. And if anything should be unique in high school, it should be your college search because you're looking for different things. Different things are important to you. So it is important that students look at other schools besides the schools that their friends are looking at because there's so many amazing colleges out there. I often see that students have very top heavy lists. Many students will come to me with all their schools in the reach area. So you really want to make sure that you have target and likely schools as well, so that you have schools that you're feeling confident that you're going to be admitted to, especially if those reach schools, we're seeing them become even more selective, may not be options for you. You want to make sure that you have offers from other schools as well. Trust me, that will make you a lot less stressed your senior year. It is important to have a plan. And I encourage students, especially those that are in sophomore, junior year, to start thinking about what is my plan? When am I going to look at schools? When am I going to start tracking my activities? When will I make my resume? When am I visiting colleges? All of those things are really important to think about. This really reduces stress. And that truly is the name of the game here. The earlier this you start, the more you can break it into manageable steps and it's not a last minute scramble. My hope is that every student, by the time they start their senior year, is just finishing up the application process, not starting it. That's what makes an enjoyable senior year. But you do need to make sure that you're thinking about that in the summer between junior and senior year. A plan also allows you to keep tracks of deadlines and requirements. Like keep a document. What schools are you applying to? What are their deadlines? What's required at each school? So you know exactly what needs to be done and you can prioritize how and when to do those things. This actually leads to a much stronger and much higher quality application when you're submitting them because you have time to revise your essays, time to think about your narrative, think about what you want to talk about on the supplemental essays, and also have strategic choices about where you're applying and what schools you're going to add onto that list to make sure it's balanced. And it really does allow you time to do research. And research is one of the things that takes the most time, and students don't think about that. If I'm suggesting a school to a student that they haven't heard of, researching takes time. Look at schools, get a list of schools that are a good match for you, and then explore their websites. Go to their admissions page, take the virtual tour, go to the computer science webpage, see what classes are available. There's so much available online right now. So it's a great way to get started in the process. And starting early and making a plan allows you to do that. I do have families at times ask me for a plan or grade by grade checklist. So I just want to let you know that there is something available on our website. These are free to download. So if you think this would be helpful, you can get a copy of this at ectutoring.com/college counseling. Just go to the EC website and it's easily navigated to get there and you can download this. So if you haven't started thinking about the college process or just want some general guidelines, this is a great way to start. And I hope that I provided a lot of information for you, and I hope that you're walking away feeling like you have some things that you can do on your own to get started. But I just also want to emphasize that there absolutely is a college for everyone. Sometimes I have students come and say, oh, I just don't think I'm going to find the right place, or I don't know if I'm ready. And sometimes parents express those things as well. The college landscape is diverse, it's inclusive. Every student, regardless of their background, their academic record, their interests, can find a school that fits their goals and their personality. There's high achieving students. There's also students looking for a nurturing environment, a small liberal arts school. The idea, though, is to really take the time and explore and find something that feels right for you, There are thousands of schools. The key is to find some place where you feel good, you feel like you can grow, and it's the right spot for you to thrive. That's really the goal of all of it. If you have any interest in hearing more about working with a college counselor like myself, you certainly can scan this QR code and it will bring you to be connected with one of our educational specialists. They're wonderful. They can talk through what your child's needs are, what you might be thinking, and match you up with someone who might be able to help and guide you through the process. So I did mention earlier in the call that we are going to go to Q&A. So I think I'm going to stop sharing my screen for now and check and see if we have any questions in the Q&A. If anyone has questions and you haven't loaded them in yet, please feel free to add those in. I don't think I have any questions right now, Jenna.
Yeah, I don't see any questions, but we'll wait a minute or so. And if anybody wants
Okay.
to drop a question in there or one in the
Yes.
chat.
All right. Yes, please feel free to drop any questions in there. I'm happy to answer anything if anybody has questions. And it really can center around anything. I do know a little bit about test prep, and I also work with a lot of students who have ADHD, so and learning differences. So don't hesitate to add any questions around that in there as well. Oh, it looks like I'm getting a couple questions in the chat. So let me switch over to that. Okay, let's see. For a teacher recommendation, is a coach or a club sponsor appropriate versus a classroom teacher? This is a great question, Melissa. So it depends on the college. So colleges, every college will have a different requirement for what they allow as far as recommenders. Every school is going to want a recommendation from a college counselor or a guidance counselor. And I'll tell you, I get a lot of questions about that. Why do they have to have it from the college counselor? The college counselor often can speak to the student as a whole, their entire academic record, which is helpful. And then as well, they also share information like, I know their grades dipped when they took pre-calc, but the teacher went out on leave and we had a long-term sub. So sometimes they provide some insight to the application. Colleges will also then say we allow this many teacher recommendations and this many other recommendations. So they may say we allow 0, 1, 2, 3 teacher recommendations, and then there's a different category on the Common App called other recommenders. And other recommenders can be a coach, a club sponsor. I read them from parents before, employers, but the school has to allow those. So if a student has an outside recommender that they want to include, I definitely would line that up, but no, it won't be available for every school. It'll depend on if the school allows it. Okay, I have a question in the Q&A. At a highly selective schools, how much weight is given to the interview? That's a great question. I actually just worked with a student who interviewed last weekend with Princeton, and we met to prep for it, and it was an alumni interview, and you have to be asked to do that interview. So, but the weight that that carries will vary by school. So, and if you look at the schools, there's something called the Common Data Set, and that gives you a lot of information about schools. They will list on there whether they take an interview into consideration. So once a student has a college list, right before they're submitting their applications, I will make them a Google Doc. And I think this is a great way to go with every school that they're applying to, whether that school takes demonstrated interest into consideration, whether they take interviews into consideration, and are there any extra application processes for merit scholarships or honors college. So those are kind of things you want to keep track of because the answer to this question, how much weight is given, will be different for every school. Okay, let's see. Next question. If my extracurriculars are strong, but don't quite relate to the major, not uncommon, I'm looking at how can I supplement that within other parts of my application? I think that's a great question. So many students don't have the opportunity to explore their major before they head into college. Some will. Many health science students will do shadowing, will, maybe intern, different things. So, getting experience in that. I've had students who are in architecture and will do architecture summer programs. So those types of things are common, and I do say it a lot. But I also see students who are doing extracurriculars that have nothing to do with their major, and that is okay. That's what makes you a well-rounded applicant. You want things outside of that. But what you want to make sure is that your academic background is showing that you're prepared to do well in that major. So again, like if you're looking at, in engineering, you want to make sure you have strong math and science courses. When you're looking at your application, there's certain ways that you can show your personal narrative, your essay, your supplemental essays, your resume. Those are really your three main ways that you can share that. And your resume is also coupled with the Common App activities section, where you have 10 activities that you can list out the things that you've done and include a short description of them. Hopefully that answers your question. I may have missed it, but how do we access the recording of this webinar? Absolutely, no worries. I mentioned it at the beginning, but for those that joined just a few minutes later, I want to let you know that this webinar is being recorded. Jenna and I actually spoke about it earlier, so we're going to make sure that we get the recording to Jenna and she will send it to you, or we may follow up tomorrow directly from Educational Connections as well and send you a copy of that.
Yeah, and I'll just chime in here. So we are planning, we'll send it out in the PTSA newsletter, and then we'll probably put it in the closed social media group that we have on Facebook, and then we'll include it in Loudon Valley's newsletter. So look for whenever the next, I guess this is Tuesday. Hopefully we get it in time. We can get it into this Friday's newsletter, so you'll be able to find it there too.
Perfect. Great. Thank you so much, Jen. I really appreciate it. I always think it's a lot of information to absorb at one time. So it's almost nice to sometimes go back and watch it over again. And sometimes parents will want to watch it or share it with their children as well. So I'm happy that you'll be able to watch the recording again. So I think I've answered all of the questions. I think we're in good shape. So I want to thank everyone for joining me tonight. It was very, very nice to be able to share some of this. I hope it was helpful, and I hope you walked away feeling more confident and maybe a little bit less stressed. My recommendations always start early, ask questions. Admissions professionals, college counselors, we're all very happy to help. So I'm sure that your guidance office is helpful as well. So don't hesitate to reach out. Everybody wants to make sure that your child finds the right college for them, and I'm confident that they will. So
Well, a
thank you.
huge thank you, Renee, for joining us. We're so excited to have you with us, and just again, our appreciation for everybody that was here, and that will enjoy your webinar link that comes
Great.
afterwards. Thank you so much for joining us and sharing inspiration and insight with us.
I appreciate it. Thanks for the opportunity. I hope you all have a wonderful night.